what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. Today we're going to be doing Modern State of Mind Part 2. I did the first video a couple of weeks ago. I think it was towards the beginning of May, and pretty much if you haven't seen the first one, which I'm not even going to say I'd recommend watching the first one because these are very like time sensitive videos. It's pretty much where I talk about like the current state of Modern in terms of like recent events and like how I think the format is shifting and all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of a way for me to talk about it like as an overview and kind of sort of separating myself from the equation. I do these other videos called Modern Updates, which is like my personal Modern updates, which are like very different, and I feel like if I talk about all in one, that's just way too much stuff to talk about, so I decided to separate these into two videos. So pretty much in this, it's going to be about talking about two pretty recent very recent tournaments. The first was a Grand Prix Toronto. There was a team tournament, which I do want to kind of talk about team tournaments in this video a little bit, which was the 20th. And the other one was the 19th, which was the Modern Open, which was Louisville. And I want to talk about kind of like the top 8 and pretty much like what's going on, I would say, with the format and like what decks people are playing and like how I think the direction of Modern is basically going to be going. So I first want to talk about the team tournament, mainly because there's only 4 lists, because that's just how team tournaments work. And I kind of want to start this video talking just about team tournaments in general, which I haven't talked about on my channel at all. I think because I was like trying to formulate my thoughts about them. And I was listening to, I don't even remember who, someone talking about team tournaments. It may have been Jerry Thompson. And Jerry Thompson, I believe, who was talking about how on his podcast, the Game Podcast, which is awesome. You should totally be listening to it if you're not. What I really like about that podcast is they've been recently talking a lot about Standard because Dominaria came out a bit ago, and you know, there's so much stuff with Standard going on, but I still find it really valuable to listen to even if you don't play Standard. Like, I am not someone who likes Standard, but I still will listen to the stuff because I'm like, there's still stuff about Magic in there, and it's still valuable. Anyways, the team tournament. So, on the game podcast, they pretty much talked about how, on one of the most recent episodes, about how it's really difficult to determine in a team tournament how each team member is basically doing. So like, you could have a trio where the Modern player, for example, like on here, the Modern player is like not good at all. I'm not saying that any of these Modern players aren't good. I'm just saying that you can have instances where there are, and like the other teammates are like carrying that person basically through the tournament, and that Modern player is not doing well. So like, I don't think these results are the be all end all of everything. I don't think everyone should be like swinging every decision on Modern from these tournaments. However, I do think that it's valuable to look at these. So I'm not super sold on the team tournament thing. I also personally find that a lot of my friends play the same formats. Like, I don't know of any people, like a lot of my friends are in the position where we just don't play Legacy. Like, I have a lot of EDH friends and Modern friends, but I don't have a lot of like Legacy friends. So I can't even viably seeing myself go to a tournament because I don't really have a Legacy friend. For a lot of people, they don't have that issue. Maybe that's me just being like, this is my position, but I feel like a lot of people are in that position. Legacy is really expensive, and I feel like it's just not a format for everyone. Whereas I think Standard is a little more friendly. I don't know if that's like the right word here, if that makes sense. So anyways, the 4 decks in the top 4, I don't know how to express this, were Humans, Jeskai Control, Mardu Pyromancer, and Hollow 1. I am not surprised to see any of these decks in the top 8. Actually, that's kind of a lie. I am kind of surprised to see Jeskai Control do that. And if you know anything about me, you know that Control is like literally my favorite. I am so hyped whenever I see Control in any top 8 tournament to begin with. Seth Manfield was piloting it, and let's take a look at the list. He got in 2nd place with this deck. So the deck is pretty standard. I would say there's nothing really nuts, I would say, in here to really note. There's not there are only 3 Celestial Colonies, 24 lands. Now here's the deal, is typically in blue-white / Jeskai list, you will see a more land heavy deck. I remember reading some article, I don't remember who it was, on blue-white control. They're very similar. And someone was saying that like, the thing with Sphinx's Revelation is it's just so much mana that it's like, is that really the direction that you want to be going in pretty much in late stages of the game? I personally love Sphinx's Revelation. I'm going to be running it in my blue-white / I don't know about the Jeskai list, but definitely the blue-white list. I will be running it 1 copy. A lot of people are leaning towards Glimmer of Genius. I do like Glimmer, and I think it's good. I think the argument with Sphinx's Rev is it's so much mana, and a format is so quick right now, it's very aggressive, that like people don't know how good Sphinx's Revelation is right now. Now, I don't know if it's the right move or the wrong move. I don't really know what the story is. I personally really like it. I don't know how I feel about it in Jeskai though, so I kind of understand them not running it. I do think though that people, in terms of the control deck and like where to be right now, is people think Jeskai is the control deck. However, with that being said, I was in a conversation yesterday with Kevin, if you're watching this, and Kevin and I were just talking. We talk about control whenever we're together because we love control. And I always find it really fun to talk to other control players. It's like my favorite thing. And we were saying how he's under the assumption that like blue-white, he just likes blue-white a lot better. Thinks it's a little bit better actually. And what I think I like more about blue-white is versus Jeskai is Jeskai runs things like a Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix, which is awesome, and those cards are great and great like win conditions, you know, because it was so funny. I was playing Modern last night and people were like, this guy was like, he was like, how do you win like in this control deck? And I was like, oh, you know, like Snapcaster Bolt, Keranos, Torrential Gearhulk, you know, like all these sweet cards. Thing too, I will say, and if you're someone who's at a toss-up, oh, do I play Jeskai or do I play blue-white? And maybe I'll do a video on this if you guys think it would be helpful. I will do a video on playing Jeskai over blue-white and this will be the last comment that I make about it, is that Jeskai, you can play less lands. Like this is just running 24. Typical blue-white lists run like 26 because again, you are trying to cast things like Sphinx's Revelation, which you want to generate a ton of mana. Also, activating your colonnades, that costs like 5 mana to do, right? 5 mana, and then you have that, yeah, it costs 5 mana to do, and then you have that land in and of itself, so like you can't use that land to tap it. So it costs a lot of mana, so you want to be running a lot of lands. In blue-white lists, you can run things like Field of Ruin and really disrupt their plan, which I personally really like. But yeah, super happy to see Teferi. I haven't really made any comments about him, but he's amazing. I feel like that is now the blue-white / Jeskai could like Planeswalker 2 run over Jace. That doesn't even include talking about Grixis Control, because like Grixis Control doesn't have Teferi, so like we run Jace, which I think makes sense. Some places, a lot of decks aren't even like playing Jace, which is so interesting to see like that he's not even really being used right now. I just think the format is a little bit too quick. But the thing that I really wanted to talk about is I think that there is going to be a rise now of control decks. I think with control placing really highly, getting second in both that team tournament and Louisville, that Jeskai Control got the top 8 in both. I think a lot of people are going to be turning to this deck, especially with the addition of Teferi. I think he's the Planeswalker that people are super hyped of right now, and I'm really excited to see that. So that to me, and I know I spent a lot of this beginning talking about control, and yes, I am partially biased. I do really love control, but like I legitimately feel like this is the push, this is the direction that control is going in, and I am so happy to see a Planeswalker like Teferi. I love when other people play control. I am so happy to see it like find its place. It also is a very good humans matchup. These types of decks do really well. Like control does well against a lot of different things. I would argue Jeskai and blue-white do. Grixis is a little weird. I don't want to get into that in this video, but it's a little bit different. Also, the Jund matchup is really good. Switching over to Louisville, top 8. Janine Comparent's classic Jund player. Jesse Hefner as well. I remember hearing that name. He's on Jund too. I tend to find that the control match against a deck like Jund is pretty in your favor. It is not amazing. I'm just saying that, but I do find that you have so much removal that any threat they put down, you just kill. A lot of their spells are really useless. Their kill spells, like, you don't run a lot of creatures, and especially in the direction that these control lists are going of playing less creatures and things like Teferi as your win condition, it's like, you don't really need a lot of creatures. So like a lot of times people with their disruption, like there's a lot of like creature disruption in the format right now is so useless against control, which I think gives this deck such an edge, that they have so many useless cards, which I just think is great. And I think it's, okay, so Mardu Pyromancer made it on both of the top lists. Third place in the team tournament, I'll list these tournament score things down below if you want to check them out, by Tyler Blum. On the team tournament, Mardu Pyromancer, and the Mardu Pyromancer by Marshall Arthurs. First place in Louisville. I'm super happy to see this deck. I really love Mardu Pyromancer. Do not mistake that as saying I would build the deck, because a lot of times people hear me say I love a deck and they're like, oh, so you're gonna build it? And I'm like, absolutely not. This is not a deck I would play. However, this deck is really sweet. This deck reminds me a lot of Jund in that it runs a lot of different things. The top decks are like really good. You do have like dead top decks. Like you're gonna top deck a Thoughtseize late stages of the game, and that just kind of sucks. But the deck is, like the creatures are so good. It's super simple. You're just running a Young Pyromancer and a Bedlam Reveler, and you run Culligan's Command, which you guys know is one of like my ultimate favorite Magic cards. Love this card to death. And this deck just, like, the cards are all just so good. Like, a lot of times when I evaluate decks and I think of like playability, I think of like, if you're top decking this card on turn 10, how good is it? This is a deck where you top deck like a lot of these cards in late stages of the game, and you're like, I am emotionally happy to draw this card. It runs a ton of hand disruption for my hand disruption folks out there who love doing things like that. And you like, Bedlam is like everything you want in a card. You draw cards off of it, you're left with a big dude that's got prowess, you're running so many instants and sorceries, it is literally half of Marshall Arthur's list. It's 29. You're running Blood Moon, which just hoses so much of the format. Like, this deck is so versatile, and fair as well. I'm so happy to see like a deck like this be so pronounced in the formats right now. I do want to briefly touch upon the Traverse Pyromancer deck that Brennan DeCandio had a bit ago, and I don't think that deck is as good, to be honest. It runs Traverse the Uvenwald, which is amazing. However, I think the mana base is just too greedy. My one friend Isaac actually had Mardu, tried Traverse, went back to Mardu. I just think it's the better deck in my opinion, and I'm not saying that just because like this got first and third. I'm not saying that. I just think that the mana base is so much better and easier and works out for you, and I think that is ultimately what pushes me into thinking Mardu is just like strictly the better deck, is just the mana base. So that is kind of my whole view on that. I guess we'll just briefly go over the rest of the team tournament because there's only 2 decks left on it. We have Humans. There's really not a whole lot to say. I think that Humans is kind of potentially going to be falling off the radar with the rise of Jeskai and blue-white control. I think a lot of people are just, Humans doesn't really win in a matchup like that. I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's just really tough. Like, Humans does have that disruption of the hand, but I don't think, I'm not saying it's not good. It is really good, but I think with the rise of control, I don't know how well positioned Humans is gonna be. There was also a Humans list in Louisville. Dylan Hand got 5th through 8th place. With the deck. There's not really a whole lot to say. Humans has been dominating for a little bit right now. And the last on the team trio list was a Hollow One deck. Not very surprised to see this. I think this deck is still fire. I really like it. There's nothing quite like the explosive draws and all that kind of stuff. However, what I will say about this is that a lot of people get sucked in to decks like this. Oh my gosh, I can totally just kill you on turn, whatever. That's great. However, And I posted a status on Twitter a while back of me saying that when people get mad with a deck like Affinity, when you top deck an Ornithopter on turn 10, you have no one to blame but yourself when that's an awful top deck. I have no sympathy for you. You chose a deck where that happens. Your top decks in Affinity aren't as good. Now with Karn, I think Affinity is much better. That's a different story though. But what I really like about this kind of deck is you run so much card draw, and your top decks are good. So if your late game does get there, your late game is still really good in this game, which I think is, in this deck, which I think is sweet. Another thing too that I will note is people think, and I talked about this in my sideboarding errors video, which honestly I think is one of the best videos I filmed, like in terms of valuable information, is that people play a card that will just hose your graveyard and think it kills a deck like this. But if you're not applying pressure, if you're not killing their creatures, guess what? You're in for a rough time because they're still gonna play a Tassiger. Guess what? Tassiger is still a 4/5, and even if you've disrupted their graveyard and they can't put things in their graveyard, guess what? They can still kill you with the 4/5 if you don't get it off the table or have blockers for it. So that's what I think makes this deck very resilient, is I do think the late game in a deck like this is really sweet. Yeah, I think this deck's awesome. I'm super happy to see it well positioned. There's nothing quite like, you know, casting 3 Hollow Ones on turn 1. Like, come on, living the dream. And then, yeah. So, there's that, and what else do we have to talk about? Okay, so, Boggles. You know what is funny about this deck is, there's a lot of decks that I am very, very strong opinions on. Literally, like, everything. And I can tell you how I feel about a deck, if I like it, if I think it's good, if I think it's well positioned. Boggles is a deck that I just don't know how to feel about. And I'm sorry that I can't give a better answer than that. I just don't know how. Like, I don't know what I think about the deck. I think a lot of this stems from me feeling like it's a deck that is such a cop-out. Like, I think it's a deck that's so easy to pilot that it makes me mad, I guess, that people, like, play this deck and do well with it. I don't know if I'm making sense right now. I feel like I'm coming off as really being very aggressive, and I'm sorry. I just, like, I just think this deck is so easy to pilot, and I think that kind of makes me mad. I don't really know if I'm making sense. I think I'm just going to leave this point up there because I haven't formulated my thoughts, and I don't really know how to fully describe it. If someone can emotionally try to put into words how I'm feeling and you want to leave a comment, that would be super awesome. I don't want to say I'm like, oh, I hate every Boggles player, or this deck sucks. Like, no, that's not my mentality. It's not how I'm trying to come off. It's just like, I don't really know how I, like, emotionally feel about this deck. Okay, we have 2 more decks to talk about from the top 8. The first is Blue-White Midrange by Jimmy Smith. Now, there's a lot of differences, I would say, in terms of, not a lot. Actually, there are. There are quite a bit of differences between this deck and a deck like Blue-White or Jeskai Control, and I want to talk about it. Or I guess not Jeskai because this is Blue-White. So, like, what's the difference between Blue-White Control and Blue-White Midrange? So, here's the deal. Is this kind of deck is more creature heavy. It runs Geist of St. Traft, which is an incredibly hard card for people to interact with. It runs also Spell Queller, which is amazing. This card is so sweet. What's really cool about this is you exile their big threat, and then you are left with a 2/3, which is so good. The instants and sorceries, you're not running board wipes. In Blue-White Control, you're running things like Supreme Verdict. You're not doing that in this deck because your creatures are more precious and they all die to something like Verdict. And I'm actually surprised. Oh yeah, there is one in the sideboard I will note about this list, which is very important for those matchups that you do have to be on the more control side, where you may take out some of your creature removal. How I feel about this deck. okay, I don't want to say I don't know. I personally prefer blue-white control. I just think it's better. I think it's better right now because I find myself as a Grixis control player, there are so many times where I'm like, I just want Damnation. I just want a board wipe. And that's how I feel. So I think if the format continues in that direction, I think a deck like blue-white control is better. It's not to say that I don't like a deck like this. It still runs Snapcaster Mage. You guys know it's my favorite Magic card ever. Hell yeah, I'm super stoked on a deck like this. I think I just prefer... Oh, I'm so sorry. This deck is running Lightning Helix. It says blue-white on it, but it's Jeskai. It runs Helix. Where are the Lightning... Oh, it does run Lightning Bolt too. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I got confused on the title. This is Jeskai. But anyways, so it's cool. It kind of combines, like, Jeskai and blue-white control and this whole kind of like mid-range concept, which I think is really cool. I just prefer board wipes. That's just me. In terms of what's better, like what's more popular is obviously control, but like I do think a deck like this is still really sweet. And I am happy to see it in the top 8. I think this deck is very cool. No, it's just not a deck I would play. Maybe that's how I should phrase it instead. I just prefer control better. That's just me. Okay. Here is the last list. Storm. You know, it's so funny, as I was playing against Storm last night in Modern, and I was thinking to myself that there was a point in time where not every Storm deck was playing Gifts Ungiven. And it's so weird. Does anyone remember that? I remember the moments where that was like a sliver or a percentage of the decks. Now it's like every Storm deck, you just need Gifts Ungiven. The deck has gotten slower, but who cares? Gifts Ungiven is a fantastic Magic card. This deck is sweet. It hasn't changed too much, I would say, I mean, I haven't really talked about Storm. I do really quite like this deck. I haven't really talked that much about it. What I find as a control player is it's actually kind of hard to play against because it's kind of hard to know what to counter if you only have one counter spell. And it's just kind of like a tough deck to kind of see where to go with. It's kind of tough to play against. What I found though is Surgical Extraction is really just the best card against this deck. And I know a lot of people are really up on Damping Sphere, which I do really like. I'm not saying that I don't at all. I just think Surgical is really good against this deck. I was playing against Storm last night, ended up winning a game because I Surgicaled their Empty the Warrens and their Grape Shot. So, moral of the story is it's really hard for them to come back from something like that. So, yeah. I do really like this deck. What is this card? Unsubstantiated. I don't actually know what this card is. Oh, return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. It's kind of like a remand. That's kind of cool. Anyways, yeah, this deck's really cool. I like it a lot. I think it's very consistent, and it can just win out of nowhere, which I really like. Something I don't like is the lack of disruption. I mean, a lot of people can say running things like Remand is your disruption. They have their one spell, you remand it, you don't even care. I just still think the deck is really good. I like it. Storm's a really sweet deck. That is it pretty much for talking about the most recent tournaments. I hope you guys like this Modern State of Mind. I hope you guys like the series. I think it's really cool that I got a chance to kind of talk about, you know, what's going on in Modern right now. And yeah, I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye.